It's July 2016, and you just decided to check out this cute little new show your uncle recommended called Stranger Things. Allegedly, it's supposed to be a lot of fun, nostalgic of an 80s coming-of-age sci-fi adventure. So, you throw on the first episode only to immediately be met with the sound of alarms and a scientist running frantically from something. Clearly, something has gone very wrong that has left this man fleeing for his life. He seems to have reached his destination, an elevator that will likely lead him to escape. He stares back down the hallway he came from in fear that whatever was chasing him may still be coming, only to realize that somehow it's already reached the elevator shaft and immediately descends upon him from above. We never see the creature, but we hear its otherworldly cries right before it claims its prey. This is how we establish our monster. Hi, my name is JHaff, and I make all sorts of analysis videos on games, shows, movies, and whatever else. And I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of spooky stuff. I love a good movie monster, and I also happen to love consistent and quality writing. So I find it really bothersome when something that I once found pretty freaky gets overused and overexplained to the point of not being scary due to inconsistent power scaling and straight up just lazy writing. And with the latest release of the frankly underwhelming and disappointing last season of Stranger Things, I've really wanted to focus on one aspect in particular, which is the Demogorgon, a creature that was once very mysterious and quite scary that has since lost all of its scare factor and really only exists to be a cool looking plot device that can't even kill Ted Wheeler. I mean, really? Ted Wheeler?
Sharon, are we out of cheese balls?
So today we're going to explore what, once upon a time, made the Demogorgon such a great movie monster, and how the writers wound up ruining their own creation. Thanks, Duffer Bros! So when it comes to movie monsters, the first impression is everything. So many great horror movies have to start with an opening kill to establish our monster as a threat to not just the audience, but also to our characters. Michael Myers kills the babysitter. Pennywise kills Georgie. The Demogorgon kills the scientist in the lab. Jaws, It Follows, The Ring, Sinister, every Scream movie, almost every Saw movie, etc. all establish the danger right out of the gate by killing someone and setting the tone. People can and will die throughout this story. Therefore, we, the audience, are set up to fear for our main characters because there's a chance that they, or anyone around them, could be killed or brutally injured by the main threat of the story. If the writers really want to sell a creature as dangerous, there should be an inherent cost that comes with facing this creature head on. Characters don't have to die or even be injured during each encounter, but the more times we encounter a creature and our characters escape unscathed, the less of a threat the creature will pose to the characters, and thus, the audience won't be as intimidated when it is on screen, because we are fully aware it poses no real threat to the main cast. Come on, attacker, do something. You're a monster. You're a hunter. So you mean to tell me we're just scared of middle-aged women now? What are we doing? What are we doing here? And honestly, our season 1 Demogorgon doesn't even do much in the grand scheme of things, but it still remains incredibly mysterious and scary while being presented in a consistent way. See, it's not actually this crazy killing machine powerhouse that we see in later seasons. It's still incredibly deadly, but it's consistent. It's not 1 minute mauling everyone it sees and then suddenly taking it easy on our protagonists, just because the writers want it to. It's just a creepy little guy that is definitely dangerous, but its power scaling remains consistent across everyone it encounters. So here's all it does. It kidnaps Will, of course, kicking off the story, kills off a few random, briefly mentioned Hawkins residents who contribute to the missing persons mystery, but it only kills off one named character, Barb. While it does seem like it kills Dr. Brenner off screen, which is later retconned to be that he survived somehow, which also serves to lessen the Demogorgon's threat factor because that's just another character who somehow survived an encounter with this thing. And of course, as encountering this thing is very dangerous and comes with a great cost, the greatest cost of all for facing the Demogorgon was Eleven needing to sacrifice herself in order to kill it, which was of course, undone when Stranger Things changed from being a standalone anthology horror mystery series to a 5-season-long soap opera hell-bent on keeping every character alive outside of the ones they introduced each season for the sole purpose of dying. Because every dead character is an opportunity lost to sell Funko Pops or Legos or t-shirts of that character. Thanks, Duffer Bros! Regardless, the Demogorgon remains consistent throughout the first season, and the Duffers intentionally keep it away from our main cast because encountering it is incredibly dangerous, and escaping it will make it seem, not dangerous. And looking back at every single one of those examples I gave of great horror introductions, the monster is always hardly shown, if at all. Because you know what makes these opening kills even scarier? If we don't know what's doing the killing. Leaving it up to our imagination, or letting us see or hear it only just a little bit, giving us just enough information to start asking questions, is a great way to get the audience engaged right out of the gate. Why the hell is this clown in the sewer? What the hell is this guy running from? If it came from a laboratory, let's be honest, it's probably not very good. A good first impression involves establishing the threat, but not exposing it. We want to establish the horror and mystery and try to keep that lasting as long as possible. We don't want to know everything about the monster right away. Only small amounts of information and exposure should be drip-fed to the audience throughout the story in order to keep that mystery alive. And truthfully, we should never get all of the answers we're asking for, because the details don't really matter. And the more that we can explain about something paranormal, you lose the para prefix, and this shit just starts to seem pretty normal. In season 1, we never truly learn what the Demogorgon is, or really where it came from. We don't know anything about the Upside Down and how it works, and we don't know about this thing. Does it breed? Does it grow? Can it communicate? All we know is that it's a predator, which Nancy infers that it kind of works like a shark, that gets a scent for blood from miles away and locks onto it. Yet we see little elements of intelligence that add to this uncanny effect of this monstrosity. It's not just a mindless killing machine. It has elements of strategy to its killings, like opening a gate into the Upside Down to basically teleport into the shed with Will while he's hiding, or avoiding the traps that Nancy and Jonathan set for it, and leaving the fight momentarily while it waits for the right opportunity to return and strike. This all serves to make a creature incredibly scary when we find out that it's not just a predator, but actually a pretty formidable threat. But it's still a creature that we don't understand. When we open season 5 and this creature is bowing down to its master, it is exemplifying traits that we are way too familiar to. This thing is no longer a thing at all. It's acting like a person, just a soldier that moves and looks like a creature. It's nothing more than a weapon being aimed by the hand of Vecna, who is also just a guy. But he teaches us that Demogorgons can be tamed and controlled. They take orders and have respect for upper management. This isn't scary anymore. And honestly, looking back, the cracks started to form as early as season 2. You see, in order to prop up the threat of the Mind Flayer, we had to downplay the threat of the Demogorgons, which were now just its henchmen. A fine concept. In a sequel, it's only natural to want to up the stakes and introduce a bigger threat to outdo the original. Yet, while outdoing the original, the villains that the Demogorgons existed to prop up, Vecna and the Mind Flayer, wound up losing all of their intimidation factor by the last season anyway, as they both just become big, dumb Marvel villains to shoot at, which leaves the Demo's nerve feeling especially pointless. In season 2, they sort of wrote themselves into a corner with the fact that the season 1 Demogorgon was a very difficult creature to defeat. So they had to be nerfed, and the writers decided to create some mini Demogorgons, the Demodogs, which our main cast can more reasonably go up against and have more of a chance of surviving. This is a fine concept, but in order to do this, the writers intentionally showed us the cycle of metamorphosis of the Demogorgon, as it grows from a little slug into a full-on monster. But now, this does the disservice of giving us way too much of an understanding of this creature. We shouldn't be able to make fucking charts that display its life stages. It's no longer an unknown, mysterious creature that can't be fully comprehended by man. Now it's no different than a real-life animal with realistic stages that we can understand and observe. And I'm sorry, but you mean to tell me that Dustin's pet demodog, Dart, remembers him and understands him enough to avoid its monstrous instincts? Huh? Thanks, Stuffer Bros! Word to the wise, if you want your movie monster to remain a threat, don't show it becoming fucking domesticated. You wouldn't domesticate a xenomorph, would you? Although, Stranger Things honestly shares a lot of the same issues as Alien, which went way too in-depth on its explanations for how the alien came to be, showing off all of its metamorphic stages to the point of no longer having that mystery that it once did, because we know too much about it now. But at least nobody was ever able to keep one as a pet. Mysteries build tension, and when certain details are left up to our imagination, the shit we accidentally wind up coming up with in our heads is typically far scarier than what the writers could have ever thought of anyway. Yet, having the Demogorgon exhibit normal, dog-like behaviors, and then later straight-up human behaviors, it doesn't feel far enough from reality to be genuinely creepy anymore. Turning any sort of creature into just a dog is going to make the audience empathize with it, because most people love pets, and especially dogs. It is never a good idea to make the audience empathize with creatures they're supposed to be scared of, unless that's the point of your story, like Super 8, subverting the expectations of the scary monster being an actual threat. But that's not the point of the story in Stranger Things. The Upside Down is supposed to seem dangerous, and this docile demodog serves no purpose in the grand scheme of things because the writers basically forget about this concept altogether, and the Demogorgons go right back to being demonic killing machines in later seasons. But that's okay, right? Because even if the audience isn't afraid of them, the Demogorgons could still pose a genuine threat to our main cast, right? Killing off characters who are a part of, or at least close to the main cast, is also a great way of making your monsters seem threatening, and also serves to keep the stakes high, especially as you move into later seasons, where, naturally, you expect the stakes to be raised. Stranger Things Season 1 does a phenomenal job of not showing too much of the monster early on, while still allowing the Demogorgon to get a couple kills under its belt in order to keep it scary. As audience members, it's safe to assume in Season 1 that this thing won't kill off any of our likable main cast, which is mostly made up of children, because the writers made a very intentional choice to keep these kids from encountering the thing until the very end. And even in that case, they never would have survived it if they didn't have Eleven to protect them, because surviving an encounter with this thing is shown to be very difficult. It's fast, intelligent, and can take a lot of hits. Jonathan and Nancy have an entire plan and trap set up, and they still couldn't kill it. Now, as we progress more through the story, the more times our cast encounter this thing and walk away unscathed, the less threatening they become because they have a proven track record of never actually killing anyone. Couldn't even kill Ted Wheeler.
Cheese balls!
If the writers want the audience to be afraid when they're on screen, the Demogorgons have to be able to kill off a side character every now and then to at least keep up the illusion that they're a threat. That way, no main characters have to be killed and they can still get their happy endings, but the monster still remains a dangerous, in-universe threat to all characters across the board, not just random unnamed soldiers, so that we aren't, bored when the Demogorgon is on screen with our main cast. Now, in order to avoid demo fatigue, Season 3 actually made a very intentional decision to avoid using Demogorgons altogether. They are completely absent for the full season. It instead makes the very smart decision to focus on its main villain, the Mind Flayer, while introducing some new and interesting concepts that go back to being freaky and otherworldly. The Mind Flayer takes control of a small army of people in the town that all turn into goo to form into some pretty disturbing shit. It's great. Our monsters in this season are no longer animal-like or even humanoid. I mean, look at this shit. How do you even put into words how nasty and weird these things are? Say what you will about Season 3, but it absolutely got the ethereal horror elements right. The only humanoid threat are ones that are being mind-controlled by an ethereal deity that has existed for so long that it doesn't even know how old it is. Yet, the writers just couldn't resist including an end credits scene that placed a Demogorgon in Russia for literally no reason. Honestly, just get rid of that end credits, and the finale to season 3 was perfect. There was really no need to continue it past there. It could have just been that Hopper's sacrifice that destroyed the Russians' machine actually closed off the Upside Down for good, and they all lived happily ever after. But we all know that the Duffer Brothers and Netflix just like money a little too much. So then we got season 4, which is actually pretty okay in a lot of ways, but all of the major retcons and most noticeable inconsistencies in the writing started here. If we're spending so much time this season exploring how the Upside Down links all of its creatures together via a hive mind, then how the fuck is this Demogorgon still connected and alive 5,000 miles away from Hawkins and prior to any gates being reopened by Vecna? In season 2, everything from the Upside Down straight up dies when the gates are closed. So what gives? And the demo being here in this Russian prison only really serves the purpose of being a final boss gladiator fight for Hopper. Remember, the demo is no longer an ethereal being that will pop in and out of a fight in order to avoid traps and surprise its prey. Now it's just a lion in a gladiator pit. But J-Hef, there's no Upside Down in Russia, so the demo can't freely open gates that it can pop in and out of. Oh yes, of course. How foolish of me. That then just still begs the small question of how the fuck is it alive in here if there are no gates to connect it to the hive mind? When we start to have an understanding of the universe, its creatures, and its rules, plot holes start to form, and no longer are we left to theorize about the intentional mystery built up by the Upside Down and the Demogorgon in season 1. Now we're just left questioning the inconsistent writing and how the demos are sometimes crazy powerhouses, but also weak and uninterested in fighting when it comes to our main cast. Thanks, Duffer Bros! Anyway, I don't actually hate its usage here. It makes for an intense action set piece. This is all very cool, but it's not scary. The demo is pretty brutal, and Hopper doesn't immediately try to square up with it, and instead runs away, which is the smart call because it needed to be worn down and injured before Hopper could reliably face it. Plus, he needed a better weapon, a badass sword. Although it is still very stupid that a creature that has clear self-preservation instincts just takes its time to wait and pounce on its prey while it equips itself with a weapon. Although it still is very clear in this season that squaring up against a demo with no preparation or weakening it can be cause for concern. And facing it head on with nothing but a broken wine bottle will clearly get you eaten, right? When the Demogorgon arrives in the Wheeler house during the second episode of season 5, it seems incredibly vicious. Honestly, this whole sequence is incredibly tense and freaky. It's smashing through shit and throwing people around, but it's all utterly meaningless because this scene teaches us that the demos aren't really that dangerous. Even if they do their very best to murder you, you'll still be granted the opportunity to just stand there and whack it for a while before it gets bored and actually fights back. But even in that event, it won't actually be able to kill you. All the writers had to do to reestablish these things as a threat is have them kill one named character. Mr. or Mrs. Wheeler. Pick one.
Balls!
They'll be the barb of this season. We should have been focusing on these creatures as an actual threat, instead of them being, again, just soldiers of Vecna that are sent on a mission to kidnap a little girl. No, that shouldn't be the focus. We should have been establishing our main villain and his henchmen as a genuine threat, and set up the idea that people can and will die, which is pretty much all the purpose that Barb served in the first season. But not only are the demos worthless, but Vecna spends the whole season lucid dreaming, and the Mind Flayer spends the whole season as a big stupid kaiju tree. If you're going to reduce your main monsters into a soldier of the big bad, then the big bads have to be a genuine threat. And they're not either. So what are we doing here? The big dumb Godzilla monster that can be physically shot and hurt by fire is way more lame than an amorphous shadow that cannot be touched, let alone comprehended. And to make matters worse, the demos are so inconsistently written this season that it's laughable. They're only dangerous when the writers want them to be. They constantly, conveniently ignore our main characters even when they're in the direct line of danger. removing any intimidation factor they once carried while on screen. Yet in any scene where they may pose an actual threat to the main cast, they are conveniently absent. Dustin is literally stomping around the Upside Down, slamming into the roots which supposedly connect to the hive mind, while his face is covered in open wounds. And the creatures that can literally smell blood from a dimension away conveniently just ignore him while he's in their fucking house. And we, of course, all know that they never make an appearance in the final battle, which I'm assuming is definitely because the Duffers didn't know how to use them in that fight. They like to have these battle scenes where the demos look cool and tear through a bunch of unnamed guards, yet they are, in fact, quite impossible to kill. So how would our main cast even beat a horde of demos that are actually trying to hurt the main cast? Well, we'll never have to know because the Duffers just left them out of the final battle because they had no idea what they were doing, as they were shooting the final episode before they even had a finished script. Thanks, Duffer Bros!
Balls!
So, what's the point of all this rambling and complaining? I often ask myself that very question. I think the obvious takeaway here is something we all already know, that it's absolutely possible to have too much of a good thing. Yes, we were instantly fascinated by the mysterious horror concepts introduced in season 1 of Stranger Things, and we were all left wanting more. But, like in all good horror franchises that have run on for far too long, it eventually lost the plot and forgot what made it so special in the first place. The mystery. If this show had stopped after that first season, mark my words, the Demogorgon would have gone down as one of the most infamous and interesting movie monsters of all time. But now we know too much about both the Upside Down and the demos that the initial mystery is destroyed and it can never be repaired. When you're given too much exposure and information, you start to notice when a show isn't consistent with the information it previously gave you. But we would never have these issues if shows and movies would just quit while they're ahead. If they didn't want to end with season 1, then season 3 would have been a perfect ending. Just saying. But the show continued on and eventually ended with a disappointing whimper of a conclusion. But the silver lining here is you can still go back and watch the first season because it does hold up incredibly well. So, if you made it this far, I really appreciate you sticking around. Thank you so much for watching my video.